Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Rediscovery Journal. So, one of my friends actually had this really cool idea to have like an intro or outro for every episode, but I don't have an idea necessarily of how I want to go about doing that yet. So, if anyone has ideas as to what they think would be a really cool intro and outro, please leave it in the comments because I'm open to any and all suggestions. Okay, so for today's topic, I had put up a poll, potential topics, and the two top categories or topics were the evolution of friendships and fears. So I kind of decided to go with, since it was a tie, the evolution of friendships, just because that is such an important topic for me, especially right now with everything I have currently going on in my life and all of the current support I've been getting from people who truly care about me and where I'm at. So, one thing I thought was interesting is the idea of how friendships change. So, there's that one saying where it's like people come into our lives for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. And I think that that's so true. And at times, you can think someone is a friend that will be in your life for the rest of it. As time evolves or goes on, you realize that no, they were just there for a reason or for a season. And so we don't necessarily know in the moment which category someone's going to be in. And it could be a long season. You could be friends with someone for 7 years and something fizzles out. Things happen. And as people, we all kind of learn and evolve from that moment. But when it comes to for me, I guess, moving on from people in my life, if I care about someone, normally I'm all in about them. And that still goes for people that I don't necessarily still have friendships with or even close friendships with. Like once I decide that I'm invested, I still care about you, even if that friendship isn't still there or on that level. And I think part of it is when someone becomes an important part of our lives, they carve a space in our heart or our story, even if that relationship has ended, whether it's by choice, conflict, distance, time, the memories, hopes, and emotional impact that they've had and the aspects that they've been part of our life, they stay with us. That doesn't just disappear because they aren't a part of our lives anymore. At this point, I've been doing a lot of reflection in my life about people that I've had currently or even in the past relationships with because relationships are so complicated and complex, and I think that's why intent versus impact is such an important topic because there's been moments in my life where my intent is pure. My intent is to be there for a friend or to be a good person. But just because that's your intent doesn't mean that that's how it's received. I've hurt people when I've been trying to do the opposite. And that's just life where we kind of learn and grow as we go through things and realize that, wow, okay, this thing that I thought was helpful actually wasn't helpful for this person or didn't kind of go in the direction I was hoping it was going to. I think part of this for me, and I guess it would be nice to know if other people kind of have those lingering feelings as well, is do you ever have moments where you just do something and it reminds you of someone you used to be really, really good friends with? Because especially lately, or I guess the past year, I've been having that with specifically like one person. A lot of moments that have been going by my life, I think, oh wow, I want to tell so and so, but then I remember again that we're not at the point right now where we share our lives like that anymore, which is sad, but I mean, it also comes with personal growth, right? Of realizing that some things, some people we thought were going to be always a part of our lives aren't always meant to be there for all of those moments. I mean, I know for me, I sometimes go in depth as to how I feel or What I mean by that is the aspect of bearing my soul with a friend. And I feel like once someone sees you raw, meaning they see you for who you are, and you feel like you see them for who they are, it's a lot harder to move past. Plus, if you're really good friends with someone, they see you through everything. I mean, you process the good, the bad, and the ugly with them. And if you're also a good friend, hopefully you are there for them during their good, bad, and ugly moments. And that just builds more of a shared identity and history where we're different versions of ourselves and we can look back at how different we were compared to how we are now. And kind of going off of that topic, it's so interesting to think about the topic of boundaries because you can have a friend that you've had since you were a small child until like all the way through your adulthood. And I think a big component of that or part of that is as you change, they accept your boundaries. So if you originally didn't have a lot of boundaries with them, but as you're growing and evolving, you say, "Hey, I know I didn't used to say anything about this, but I don't feel comfortable with this anymore." They'll respect that and they'll be like, "Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. Like, I won't do that anymore," or something like that. But if they're not meant to be a lifelong friend, or if their maturity isn't on the same level, they may react saying things like, "Well, you used to let me say this or do this. Why all of a sudden now I'm not allowed to do it anymore?" And it also comes with perspective in the aspect that if you have somebody who truly cares about you, when there are moments where you don't feel comfortable with something, they're not going to peer pressure you or force you into that uncomfortability. They're going to do whatever they can in order to make sure that you feel comfortable in the space that you are in, which is interesting because I've had ebbs and flows in relationships. I mean, my longest friendship, oh gosh, goes all the way back to Girl Scouts. And my friendship with her has definitely evolved over time. There's been moments where we've been close, there's been moments where we haven't spoken in a while, but we, check in every now and again. And then there's been moments where I'm so grateful that she's still a part of my life because when she shows glimpses of reciprocating that care, it means the world. And especially because, I mean, we've been friends for so long. She's seen the evolution of who I am and who I'm becoming. And I can definitely say I'm a very different person than I was when we were in Girl Scouts. Very different. Even in the past few years, since I moved out of Ohio, shout out Ohio, I feel like I've really started to go into the process of becoming who I should be, leaving behind the things that were a part of me that I don't necessarily want to be a part of me anymore. One thing I've really been working on when it comes to friendships is being a lot more open in the aspect of if something's said or done that makes me uncomfortable, being vocal about that and letting the other person know, like, hey, this is a boundary for me, which is so difficult. I'm used to just trying to move my boundaries to make other people feel comfortable. And now I'm at the point where I realize, I'm just as important as the friends I have in my life. And if they care about me, they'll be willing to respect any boundaries that I have in place with that. And I truly believe that if you're in a healthy relationship of any sort, I'll be filling your bucket and you'll be filling mine. It won't be one of those things where when we spend time together, we both feel so emotionally drained by the end of it. Because I mean, there are obviously going to be moments where someone's down and they need help kind of getting back up again. But you want to have a feeling with a friendship where you're bringing each other up. You want the best for each other, root for their successes. And when there's moments of failures, you cry with them, you hold their hand, you tell them everything's going to be okay. And if you're the type of person who isn't necessarily good with those emotional moments, that's okay too. But I think the moment of, or the concept, I guess, of being a true friend is being able to be there for someone the way that they need. Now, in terms of friendships, I feel like there's, obviously subcategories. You can have work friends that you just see at work and you gab or chat here and there. You can have friends that make it beyond that threshold. So, friends you met at work, but they've actually made it into your friendship circle. You can have friends that you met out during places or by trying new things. And even like within those, I feel like the levels of friendship, you have acquaintances who know who you are, but they don't know who you are. You have general friends who know a little bit more about you. And then you also have your core friends. And I feel like your core friends are the people who see your soul. They can tell in a moment sometimes if something's off or different with you versus someone who's not super close might not necessarily be able to tell your exact mood or your exact thought. And right now, I think most of my friends that I have, I would consider closer friends, which is weird. Not like bad weird. I just mean weird different, like unexpected in the aspect that I'm surprised and grateful for how many people I have in my corner right now. When I moved from Georgia, I was hoping that friendships I made there would continue to strengthen, even though the distance was going to increase. Moving somewhere else really showed me which friendships I had there that were deep enough for someone to reach out and have that two-way street, even when we weren't in the same state. And then, even now, since moving here to Texas, I have met at least four people that I consider close friends who truly see me. And I hope that when I'm with them, they feel seen as well. I actually had two of them over yesterday, and I'm recording this on Monday, so that would be Sunday. And they came over to my apartment around 2, and they were here until 9:30, and it felt like no time went by. And that's a clear-cut sign, I think, that you enjoy spending time with someone. When you look at the clock and you're like, "Oh my goodness, it has been 7.5 hours that we spent together, and we could still hang out for probably 7 more hours and not run out of things to talk about and still feel that closeness." Now, again, I can't always you can't state how other people are feeling in a given moment, so I can't say for 100% fact that both of them were like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, this," like, having the same experience as me in terms of feeling like time stood still in the moment. But I truly appreciated every second with them, and they got me out, and we did things together, and then we came back and we did a craft, and it truly just felt like women supporting women, which is something I'm very passionate about because we all talked about, different things going on in our lives and different aspects, and the whole time the purpose of our conversation was to be heard and to hear and to make sure that the person speaking knew that they were heard in that moment and be there for them the way that they wanted to be. Sometimes people just want to vent and they don't necessarily want advice, and other times people want to vent and get advice. So, one thing I've been trying to work on recently to be a better friend is to sometimes ask, "Hey, do you just want to vent right now? Or do you also want me to provide advice?" Because I know that there are moments for me where I just want to talk to someone and I want to feel heard. Because not all situations can be solved. And I feel like most situations of conflict, yeah, they might be able to be solved, but they can't normally be solved in a moment. It normally all comes with time. And that also goes back to friendships with people in the aspect that, like, sometimes you can meet someone and exactly in the moment you can feel, okay, we have a connection, we have a bond, and you're the type of person I need in my life right now. Other people, I feel like it's more of a slow burn friendship in the aspect that the more times that you hang out, the more you get to know them, the more you realize that y'all are compatible as friends. But it's not always an instant connection. I mean, that's also for dating as well. Like, there can be some people where you're like, I don't not like this person, but I'm not in love with this person. Sometimes it takes a few times of hanging out with someone to realize that there's someone that you need in your life. Going back to friends that are in your life for a season or a reason, I feel like in general, when it comes to friendship breakups, people try and move on really, really quick. And the aspect that they're so hard, they're so difficult to work through, knowing the time that you spent with this person, how much you put in, how much they put in, how much y'all cared about each other, at least at some point. I don't know if we fully give ourselves time to grieve and mourn because, I mean, the person is obviously still alive, but they're not a part of our life anymore. And I think sometimes it's easy to imagine the future that you can have with someone and then realize that that isn't the reality anymore. And it can be really difficult to move on from. But I don't think that caring about people or wondering about them, even if they're not in your life anymore, is a bad thing because most friendships were good at one time where they contributed something good to your life. A good moment, a good purpose. I feel like we learn something from every individual that comes into our lives. So even if it's only for a short time, it's one of those sayings where it's like better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. That's kind of how I feel about all of my friendships. And I mean, yes, I remember the moments that weren't so great in those friendships, but typically when I'm looking back, I remember those moments of fun and joy and happiness and smiles and cries together. And sometimes, huh, not sometimes, a lot of the times, I wonder if in a different reality we were still friends, or if they ever wonder about me because I wonder about them, or if there's anything that I could have done differently to change that outcome. Which I know, we can't live in the world of what ifs because that will drive us crazy. But I think when it comes to people that we care about, either past, present, or future, it's hard to just fully let go of those feelings. And I don't know if part of it is my number one Clifton strength is empathy, but all of those moments shared and deep thoughts shared, they stick with me. And I wonder and I hope that everyone I've come into contact with is going well. I think it's just hard sometimes to think about. It's hard to know that someone you used to share everything with and someone who used to share everything with you is no longer that person for you and you're no longer that person for them. I know that there was a moment with one of my friendships, well, after we parted ways, where I saw they had kind of told the world something about themselves. And I was so unbelievably happy for them for sharing their true self. But then I kind of felt sad because a few years ago, I would have been one of the people they would have confided in first. And now we weren't at that point anymore. And so it's kind of eye opening, I guess, to think about and see that in reality, relationships do change over time and they don't always change the way that we want them to. So, one, I guess, like reflective prompt or question for y'all to think about is what if still caring isn't being stuck? Because I feel like it's easy to feel like, oh, wow, I'm stuck in the past. Wow, I was friends with this person 7 years ago. Why am I still thinking about them? But instead of thinking about it as being stuck, but like honoring the fact that you showed up for love. You showed up for love. You showed up for friendship, even if that story didn't end in a happy ending like the fairy tales do. life isn't always rainbows and butterflies, and that's okay. And as talked about last week, we have to have the lows and the highs in order to appreciate the experience that is life. And by having friendships come and go, I think it helps us to really appreciate those pure moments of friendship that we had, even if they aren't as long as we wanted them to be. But also, that's not something we can have control over all the time. Relationships are a two-way street, and if one person has evolved and changed and progressed, and the other person has stayed the same, sometimes they're not meant to continue on that same level of friendship as they originally had. And that's okay. Now, also, when it comes to friendships, I feel, for me at least, a big kind of related topic is chosen family. For those of you who haven't heard of chosen family before, it's when you consider friends that you have to be part of your family. An example could be a friend that you've had for a long time. For example, for me, maybe I could say Ellie, who's been on the past two episodes. She's a part of my chosen family. She's seen me through some of my weakest points in life, and she's always been there to help me up when I've fallen down, and I hope I've done the same thing for her. But we're not related by blood. And then another component to chosen family is just because someone's related to you by blood doesn't necessarily mean that they're part of your chosen family. And I feel like this is a big topic nowadays because families are so complex. And just because someone is related to you doesn't necessarily mean that they care about you. And I don't know about you, but if someone doesn't care about me, I don't know if I want them to be a part of my chosen family because I want people who I consider family to see me. And if they don't see me, at least put in the attempt to try and understand me. And so when I mentioned earlier with the close friends, a lot of my close friends I consider part of my chosen family. And, it's really interesting too because your chosen family can change, and evolve over time. Maybe someone that you didn't think was going to be a close person to you ends up becoming the closest person ever. And maybe somebody who you used to consider like a sister or a brother is no longer part of your life. Everything in life has ebbs and flows. So, to go a little bit more, I guess, in depth into chosen family or give more of a dictionary definition or more put together definition, it refers to people who we intentionally build deep, supportive, and loving relationships with, not based on blood or legal ties, but on trust, mutual respect, and emotional connection. It's the family we create for ourselves when we feel like we need more of that expansive experience. Sometimes friends feel like siblings, mentors feel like parents, partners become part of our safe space. Chosen family isn't about obligation, but belonging and feeling. And your chosen family can help you sometimes heal old wounds. If you had specific fears growing up or misconceptions about who you were and your abilities, people in your chosen family can help you see your potential and see your ability and help you to realize that you're more than what you thought you were. And that's so strong that somebody you're not related to who doesn't have that, I guess, world pressure of having or some being somebody who's supposed to automatically support you, putting in that effort and that time to show that they care and they see you and you're better or stronger than you ever thought you could be. I feel like those are the moments where people start to really see themselves and realize that they are more than what they thought they once were. And a part of chosen families is that celebration of becoming. So, as we're on our life journey and figuring out who we are and becoming our true selves, we have those individuals, those friends, or even those blood related or legally related family members who support you and comfort you in those moments where you're going through the growing pains of figuring out who you actually are. It kind of provides that emotional safety of knowing you can be vulnerable with people or growing that vulnerability with people when you've had relationships in the past where your vulnerability was used to quote unquote expose you or make you feel like you trusted the wrong person. And don't get me wrong, depending on your personality type, you may be very quick to trusting and you might be burned or figure out that people you thought you could trust weren't who you thought that they were in relation to you, but that's all part of life and growth, and hopefully you just take that information and try and gain perspective from it. I mean, that can be said for anything in life though. If something doesn't work out the way that you wanted it to, instead of looking at yourself or looking at the incident as a failure, hopefully you have that ability to turn it around and look at it as a life lesson of, oh, okay, this way didn't work out or this wasn't for me. But that doesn't mean that I'm not good enough. And that doesn't mean that I don't have people in my life who see all the amazing items or abilities that I contribute to this world. I feel like in the world where technology and social media is so prevalent, at least for me, sometimes it's very easy to feel alone. Even if I'm in a room with hundreds of people in it, sometimes I can still have those moments of feeling alone. And I think part of that is just because we're so connected to technology and device and our own minds and our own feelings. And it can just get overwhelming and isolating where I think I mentioned this last week. Sometimes I have a hard time just answering honestly when someone asks, "Hey, how are you doing?" Because the generic or general response that most people, "Oh, I'm good. I'm great. Things are fine." But I feel like once you have a friend who breaks past that veil or barrier, they can tell when something is off and they're only asking because they care. They're not asking out of obligation, even though sometimes it can feel that way. I mean, if you don't know someone very well and they ask, it may be out of obligation, but most of the time, when people spend time with you, they're not doing it because they're being forced to. They're doing it because they care. And that's because everyone deserves a relationship where they feel safe, seen, and it's reciprocal. Okay, sorry. I feel like I went on a little bit of a tangent there. But again, back to the overall concept of friendship. So if we think all the way back to when we were kids, how were our friendships built? I feel like mine were built very differently than they are now. In childhood, it was based on where you lived, who your neighbors were, who you had classes with, if you liked some of the same things and aspects like that. They were built along, around a lot of shared activities, but less about shared values. And then as you went to high school, it was more finding yourself. And the same can be said when it comes to college or straight into the career force. You're then kind of selecting more so individuals based on your experience. For example, when you go to college, it's going to be a lot more selective. If you have a specific field or degree that you're studying for, then a lot of your classes are going to be shifted towards that. So you're going to meet a lot of people who, for example, if you're in science, you'll meet a lot more people who have like analytical uh, brains or aspects of the ways that they think. What organizations you get involved in college, and what new things that you try, and how you meet people or are open to experiences impacts whether or not you'll meet other people. Then once you get past the college age and you're more into adulthood, for example, getting that dreaded career where you may be working, a 9 to 5 job, you kind of realize, oh, wow, like, I guess for me, it's like, okay, I spent around 22 years of my life on the quote unquote schooling system or involved in that. And there is no handbook once you're out of college for how you meet people, how you make friends, how you kind of figure out qualities or values you have in common with people. I feel like it's a lot harder of an opportunity to make some of these close bonded relationships. In school, everything's built on, oh, okay, we can go study together. If you're in a organization together, then you might get to know someone, or if you're out at a coffee shop, you might bump into someone versus when you're out of college and have a more structured life in terms of when your job is, it isn't necessarily as easy to meet people. If you aren't in a college setting, if you go and sit to a coffee shop, what are the odds someone's going to sit down and talk to you? I don't think it's very odd. I mean, not very odd, very common, but I also feel like it probably depends on what area you live in too. Also, just creating those bonds just becomes different as you get older. So you can have kind of like, I guess, pool level. So you can have kiddie pool level friendships or connection with somebody. So, very light. You have mild conversations, nothing too intimate. Then you get to the shallow end where you have a little bit more of a deep conversation. And then eventually you get to the deep end. Or if you move past that acquaintance stage with someone, you get to the deep end where you talk about your fears, heartbreaks, dreams, everything to like who you are as a soul, what's created you and built you to who you are today. And also, the experiences that you have with someone can kind of strengthen that bond that you have. If you underwent similar experiences or you experience life in similar ways, it can help you have that connection point. For example, if y'all both went through hardships in college and they were similar, you could bond over that. But you also have to get to the point of conversation where you're even realizing that you could bond with someone over that. And then, as paths change, relationships drift and redefined, kind of like the ocean in a way, depending on, gosh, I'm not good with, oh, we're going to try. Depending on which way the waves are going, you can come closer, go further apart. I feel like relationships are always kind of like flowing in the aspect that one event can completely shift a relationship. Again, that depends on how fragile your relationship is, but and how much foundation you'll have put into it. I feel like it also depends on how much both individuals and that friendship care about each other. Because if you both care, you're going to put in that time to discuss conflict, figure it out, and repair any hardship or hurt feelings that have occurred. But that also comes with growth too, and being able to communicate. And everyone has their own communication styles. Some people are more passive, some people are more aggressive. And so if you have a good friendship, you should have that ability to have those conversations and have both sides heard. And the aspect that if you're feeling extremely hurt by what somebody said, you shouldn't feel guilty for telling them. You should be able to communicate that without feeling like they're going to say something like, I'm sorry you feel that way, instead of saying, I'm so sorry that my words hurt you. There's a way to apologize, and I know it's not always easy to apologize, but if you have a deep friendship, people won't try and turn the apology around on you. It will be more so them taking accountability for their actions and trying to learn from it. Like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry that I hurt you. I will make sure I will not say that again. Instead of casually passing it aside and making it seem more like it's your fault that you feel that way and you're just sensitive. For me personally, though, I feel like sensitivity is seen normally as negative, but I view it as positive. It means you're in touch with your emotions. Of course, you don't want to be crying 24/7, but it means you know what you're feeling when you're feeling it. And then you also have that ability to express how you're feeling and let people know how that affected you. And one main thing I feel like goes into play when it comes to friendships is that a friendship ending isn't a failure. Sometimes you outgrow friendships and that's okay. And there are different ways that friendships can end, but that doesn't mean that the moments that you had with that person weren't worth it because they shaped or they were a part of your process of becoming who you are. And I say that knowing that for me, I've taken all of them to heart and I still question things that I've said, that I've done, how it's impacted people. But I think for me, if I had to do it all over again with all my friendships, I would rather have still had them than be spared the pain of the end. Because in those moments where I had some of these friendships, I was the happiest I had ever been. These friendships helped me find who I am, what I deserve, and showed me the evolution of how I allow people to treat me. My self worth has grown. I have grown. Now, going back to relationships, I feel like everyone at some point in their life, or most people, have undergone toxic relationships. So, what I mean by that is constant criticism, being controlled or manipulated, lack of emotional support or support of your dreams or growth. You feel like you have to walk around eggshells with the person. They kind of always minimize your feelings. Or they gaslight you into believing that the reality not leaving, the reality that you are living and the feelings that you have are not valid or true, or experiences that you feel aren't accurate in your portrayal. I feel like the first big step for things like that, or the first action moment, is acknowledging that a relationship you are in isn't healthy for you. Helping you get towards growth or helping you become the best version of yourself. It's instead kind of putting you back to a smaller version of yourself where you had less faith in who you are and what your abilities were. And in order to try and get out or break free of relationships like that, you need to set healthy boundaries that may push people who are toxic to you out of your life, maybe. And kind of then take the time to rebuild your identity of who you are. When you spend a lot of time in a relationship where they invalidate everything you think and feel, that it really changes your thought pattern and your thought path into what you think you like. So give yourself that time to rebuild who you are outside of their influence and seek friends that you have or communities like therapy that can remind you of who you are and remind you that you aren't alone. And it can be easy to think, you know, why did I let myself get into a friendship like this? But I think most of the time, friendships don't start off in those toxic places. They evolve over time into those kind of toxic events. And there always is that cliche saying that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from what's hurting you. And honestly, for most people, their number one priority is themselves. So sometimes, well, most of the time, you should maybe start thinking about making yourself more of a priority, because if you did, you wouldn't allow yourself to be spoken to in that manner. And I know for people who know me personally, they're probably going to think, okay, well, you say this, but there's been moments where you haven't taken these actions, and that's 100% true. But I'm making the effort to try and retrain my brain to not let that control me. I want to move to a healthier, happier place where I only have people in my life who care about me as a person and don't just see me as a unit to be used in order to help them grow and evolve or help them get to a specific event, because that isn't friendship. That's a parasympathetic relationship. I'm pretty sure that I said that correctly, where basically the other person is like a parasite and they're draining you, but they're getting so much out of it. They're gaining the energy you're losing. And I don't want to end this whole conversation on a negative note. So now I kind of want to refocus to moments or people in my life right now that I'm thankful for. And one of the things that's hardest for me that my mom has to kind of remind me to sit back and accept right now is to not feel bad when people want to do nice things for me. And lately, I've had a lot of friends do nice things for me. I have a friend who isn't even in the same state as me. She sent me a care package because she saw something that and thought of me. Like, how kind is that? I had another friend meet up with me and she got me coffee just because. My two friends who I had over last night, one of them got me a tea, or at least I think it was a tea. It was really good though. The whole point of it is that people show that they care in different ways. And as someone who likes to show other people how much I care about them, I need to also allow people to show me how much they care about me. Not that I'm begging, please show me, shower me with all the things, but in those moments where someone wants to go out of their way to do something kind, I shouldn't force myself to, no, excuse me, I should force myself to not argue with them about it. Because they're just trying to show me that they care. And there's nothing wrong with that. I shouldn't feel guilty for that. I shouldn't feel guilty because a friend wants to do something nice for me, because I wouldn't want a friend to feel guilty if I did something nice for them. And so I think that also relates back to the topic of treating yourself like a friend. You know, there are words that you wouldn't say to a friend, but you say to yourself all the time. And when I say you, I mean generically. I know I save my kindest words for my friends and my family that I care deeply about, and the more toxic ones have normally been stored for myself, but now I'm on the journey of trying to push through and also share that love for myself, because sometimes I can be kind of freaking great. I mean, I know in someone's story, I can be kind of freaking great. Freaking great. And I think the more we start to see it and feel it from ourselves, the more energized we start to feel, the less down in the dumps. And also just having that energy from friends when people are checking on you without any sort of push to do so, to me, that's crazy. I don't know why it feels crazy, because I love checking on my friends, but when a friend checks on me, it blows my mind that they want to take the time to do that. And it shouldn't. I shouldn't be like, oh my goodness, my friend wants to see how I'm doing. My friend wants to talk to me. Like, that's just a normal thing. So I'm in the process of retraining my brain. And as it relates to, this whole topic is on the evolution of friendships. One evolution of friendship that's important is your friendship with yourself. Because if you don't see yourself as a great person or someone who has so much to offer to the world, it can be harder for you to not only make friendships, but keep friendships that you make. So one thing that I had mentioned I was going to try to do last week, but I didn't end up doing until Saturday, was put up a whole bunch of words of affirmation around my apartment to remind me and get me in the mindset of positivity and the aspects that I do offer to the world. And I encourage you to do the same. I would be curious if people would maybe leave a comment and let me know if anything that I've said or done in the past few weeks has helped their lives in any aspect, just so that I can know if what I'm doing is positively impactful. And thank you. I know you don't have to take the time out to listen, but I'm glad that you did. And join me next week for another episode of the Rediscovery Journal. Thank you.